Unfortunately, we're in a little bit of a world where vegetables are considered bad right now, and they're improperly categorized. Like we take vegetables as a whole, tend to demonize them because we say we're not supposed to eat them as humans because they have anti-nutrients in them. But then we rope all the vegetables into that same category. So the bottom line is that there are vegetables out there that have lots of anti-nutrients in them. And there is some evidence that having copious amounts of anti-nutrients may not be the best thing for us. Essentially, can block certain nutrients from absorbing, can chelate specific minerals. They could have a negative impact. But then you have another side of the equation, playing devil's advocate here, that says, hey, maybe the little bit of poison we get from certain plants is actually a hormetic stressor and actually makes us stronger. All that aside, I said, wait a minute, well, let's just find vegetables that have low oxalates and low phytic acid and low anti-nutrients, but also have a huge health benefit. Let's put them in a list so people know which ones to eat. So let's dive right in. The first one is mushrooms. Now, with mushrooms, people don't think of them as a typical vegetable, but they still are. I mean, granted, it's a fungus, but it still has huge benefits. There was a study that was published in Food Science and Quality Management, and it took a look at white button, it took a look at oyster, and it looked at cremini mushrooms. And it found there were about 0.77 to 1.5 milligrams per 100 gram serving when it came down to phytic acid. You have no idea how much that is. Is that a lot or is that a little? On average, we consume about 250 to 800 milligrams of phytic acid per day, just in the Western world, just doing what we normally do, not eating vegetables, not making a concerted effort to eat salads. That's just typically what we consume. So this is like the smallest pin drop in this whole sea of this stuff. And you're getting still major benefits. So there's beta-glucans in mushrooms, one of the most potent fibers you could possibly get. And you're also getting a huge effect on vitamin D, which some people will discount, but there are studies that demonstrate that the vitamin D2 in mushrooms can still lead to about a 14% increase in what is called the 25-hydroxy vitamin D. Whereas if you were to take a straight up vitamin D3 supplement, it's going to increase about 54%. So yes, a D3 supplement would work better, but we should not be throwing the baby out with the bathwater with this. Mushrooms are still going to bring up your vitamin D, especially when you can't get meat for whatever reason or can't go outside much. Moving to the next one, onions. There was a study that looked at the anti-nutrient content here that was published in the African Journal of Pharmacy and Pharmacology and found that, well, onions are pretty darn low in phytic acid as well. In this case, we have about 34.2 milligrams per 100 gram serving. Okay, well, why would we want to eat onion? Is there really much benefit? It's one of the most potent sources of inulin, which when it comes down to the gut microbiome, that's the main reason I would suggest eating vegetables. It's really not the micronutrient content for me. Like, candidly, you can go get some good micronutrients from a good steak. You can get good micronutrients from a little bit of organ meat. You can get good micronutrients from some flaxseed, from just a diverse diet. I think we're really being misled if we think we can only get micronutrients from vegetables, but vegetables are fiber. And fiber, I will stand behind as being a very important thing. So onions are a very potent source of soluble fiber. But in addition to that, they have a very active flavonoid that's called quercetin. Now, I don't know if you've heard me talk about quercetin before, but it helps our body's endogenous antioxidant production and consequently is one of the most potent natural anti-inflammatories that we could consume. So we're seeing it in all kinds of like longevity protocols and longevity formulas because it really is potent. The next one is one that even Paul Saladino eats now and then. Now, Paul Saladino's a friend. He and I disagree on a lot of things, but in this world, you can still have friends that you disagree with, right? So he even eats an avocado from time to time. Technically, it's a fruit. So it's kind of a weird situation. But the phytic acid content is very, very low. We're looking about 3.18 milligrams per 100 gram serving with phytic acid. So very low anti-nutrient content, but super potent when it comes down to potassium. There is a study that was published in the Journal of the American Heart Association that took a look at 16 different trials. They found that those that added potassium into their diet, like potassium-rich foods rather, ended up having a 13% less risk of stroke. So there's definitely something to be said about potassium. But also with the avocados, we're getting a potent source of monounsaturated fat. So definitely don't want to miss out on that one. Now, when you're on the go and things like that, it can be a little bit tough to get vegetables in. I totally understand that, like going to a restaurant and just like trying to get specific vegetables and all that. Totally understand that situation. I put a link down below as a side note for a sponsor on this channel called Organifi. They've sponsored a lot of videos, and it's a great time to mention them. So they have a greens powder that allows you to basically get your fruits and veggies in a powder form. So maybe you've seen some of these other brands floating around. I really do stand behind Organifi. I think they've got a really good product, and I've known the owner for a number of years. So that link down below, using code Thomas2023 will get you 20% off your entire order with Organifi, whether it's their greens powder or their reds powder if you're trying to get the benefits of fruit without the sugar. So end up getting a bunch of servings of fruits and veggies in a really easy portable form, and they have on-the-go packs. They just make it super easy. So that link down below, Thomas2023, 20% off your entire order. Definitely recommend you check them out. Like if I'm traveling, it's just a must. Like put them in my bag, get to the hotel, add a little bit of water, and bam. Okay, next up is bean sprouts. Here's what we need to know. When you sprout something, you break down a lot of the anti-nutrients to begin with. Okay, so you make more nutrients available and you break down the phytic acid and the oxalates. There's a study that was published in the Journal of Agriculture and Food Chemistry that took mung bean seeds and sprouted them. And after just 8 days of germination, there was 24 times the amount of vitamin C than there was in the mung bean seed. I'm not saying you're gonna go out and eat seeds, but essentially once something is sprouted and you get a sprouted form of it, like bean sprouts, mung bean sprouts, different forms of sprouts, even sprouted alfalfa, sprouted grains, whatever, the sprouting process makes things more available and breaks down those phytonutrients. But bean sprouts are also a super good source of quercetin once again, and they also have a very high antioxidant binding score, which means their net effect as an antioxidant in the body is very, very high. Now we move into the next one, which is radishes. Radishes are just a good source of fiber. There are some potential anti-inflammatory effects. So there was an interesting study that took a look at lettuce leaves, it took a look at spinach, amaranth leaves, cauliflower leaves, and radish leaves. The radish leaves, which would be the highest area that you'd find oxalates or phytates anyway, didn't have any anti-nutrients compared to the others. So yeah, there's not a heck of a lot of benefit we get from a radish. It's not the most nutritious, but it is something you could add in that has an interesting taste. Now I want to move into the oxalate category a little bit more. Oxalates are slightly different than phytic acid because oxalates are stronger when it comes down to chelating or blocking mineral absorption. So this is really important. Like if you look at spinach, for example, spinach is very high in oxalates. So arguably the iron you get from spinach, you probably don't even absorb that much of because there's such an oxalate component that's blocking that. Cooking vegetables breaks this down, just so people know. I stand behind the fact that we are probably more cookivores than anything, which means we're a unique species because we cook our food. So you could take all this stuff about phytic acid and all that, and it's valid, but a lot of it gets twisted on its head once we cook this food. So because we're an evolved species that cooks, maybe we don't have to deal with this problem in the first place. And not many people eat raw Brussels sprouts to begin with, but Brussels sprouts take the cake as one of the lowest oxalate foods or vegetables that's out there. So there is a University of Michigan health system study that was put out to identify foods that were low in oxalates because people that deal with kidney stones should reduce their oxalate intake. That's a very valid thing. What they found is that Brussels sprouts seem to be one of the lowest. So definitely makes that list. The benefit you get from Brussels sprouts is huge. These cruciferous vegetables are rich in what is called indole-3 carbinol, which converts into something called diindole methane, which I've talked about quite a bit before over the years. But what this does is it helps metabolize 1,6-hydroxyestradiol, which is the unfortunate, toxic estrogen that we need to help metabolize. So it helps the liver break that down. So a huge benefit there. The next one is going to be garlic. What's up with garlic is that you find people that are still anti-vegetable, still consuming garlic. I mean, I'll use Liver King for an example, just to kind of pick on him, but he will often still consume salsa or fermented things with garlic in it. Even though garlic's a vegetable and technically has some phytic acid, it has more phytic acid in it than an onion does, but you're still seeing it floating around through different communities that are normally anti-vegetable, which is interesting to me. But the interesting thing about garlic, yes, it's low in oxalates, that's phenomenal, but the benefit we get from garlic is intense. There was a study published in Clinical Nutrition that took 120 subjects, divided them into a placebo group or a 2.5 gram garlic extract group for 45 days. The garlic group had an intense increase in their natural killer cell and T cell proliferation. That means it made their immune system more active in a good way. They had more cells going out and identifying pathogens. What else is interesting is they had a decrease in the severity and the length of various illnesses, including colds and flus. So the number of sick days was down, they rated the severity of their colds as significantly less, and they went down by a couple of days in terms of length. So garlic is something I think we should be adding in. So even if you don't do any vegetables at all, the ones that I really, really recommend you try to get in, it's gonna be garlic, because you can get by with it not being really a vegetable, onion, and the best one, if you really can, that packs a powerful punch is gonna be those Brussels sprouts. So garlic and Brussels sprouts, those are really awesome. The next one, I'll just kind of list off a little faster. We've got Bok Choy. Bok Choy also makes this list, which is also a cruciferous. And again, you're cooking Bok Choy. You don't typically eat it raw. So cook it up, put it in soup, whatever you need to do. It's very low oxalate. And the last one is one that's no surprise, and that's cucumber. The unfortunate thing is with cucumber, you're not getting a heck of a lot of nutritional value. I mean, you get some soluble fiber, but once you get the peel down, I mean, it's white, there's not much in it. It's just like basically water that's kind of swelled up in a white skin. So you're not getting a whole lot of value out of it. But if you're looking for something that's filler material, it's a great one to add in. So as always, keep it locked in here on my channel. See you tomorrow.